Welcome to GrokTALK. This is your September 12th, 2015 Is It Really News Read. Last week we reported that Governor Rick Perry's New Hampshire campaign team had jumped ship in pursuit of other political dinghies on which to cling. 6 days hence, speaking to the Eagle Forum in Missouri on September 11th, Perry announced that he's dropping his bid to be the Republican standard bearer in 2016. Let's see, quote, "We have a tremendous field, the best in a generation," Perry said. "So I step aside knowing our party is in good hands, and as long as we listen to the grassroots, the cause of conservatism will be too. I share this news with no regrets. It has been a privilege and an honor to travel this country, to speak with the American people about their hopes and dreams, to see a sense of optimism prevalent despite a season of cynical politics." Perry's move opens up the Texas primary to another Texan, Senator Ted Cruz, who stands to gain the most from a Perry departure. I bet that really rustles the RNC's jimmies. Seacoast Republican Women's 16th Annual Chili Fest is today, September 12th from 2 to 6 p.m. at the Scammon Farm, 69 Portsmouth Avenue, Stratham, New Hampshire. The event is open to the public, and admission is $10 per person or $25 per family. Presidential aspirants Carly Fiorina, John Kasich, and George Pataki are expected to attend. Interviews with Fiorina and Pataki can be found in the GrokTALK archives. NHGOP chairman person Jennifer Horn will be in attendance also. And I'm not sure if this is a bug or a feature, but former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu will also be available from 2:30 to 3:30, autographing copies of his book, How I Harpooned the First Bush Presidency. Wait, that's not it. How I Screwed the Libertarians Over at the 2012 GOP Convention. No, that's not either. How I Put New Hampshire on the Road to Becoming Massachusetts? I don't think that's it. I guess I don't know the title. He'll be there, signing a book, if that interests you. Just don't sign anything for him if he asks, and you should be fine. Last week on the program, we spoke with New Hampshire resident Max Ledoux, who joined us to discuss Governor Maggie Hassan and her inability to answer a question. Have you seen the recent Planned Parenthood videos released by the Center for Medical Progress? The yes or no question proved to be beyond the ability of the governor or her handlers to answer. New Hampshire Governor Maggie Hassan collects campaign donations from Planned Parenthood and has refused to investigate them. After a series of unfruitful exchanges with the governor's office, Max has issued a detailed right-to-know request asking for any and all communications to or from her office related to the governor and Planned Parenthood, including mentions of Center of Medical Progress, Max himself, Councilor Chris Sununu, fundraising related to Executive Councilor Chris Sununu's vote to stop taxpayer funding of 2 Planned Parenthood clinics, and so on. We will be posting the right-to-know request at GrokTALK.com sometime today, so you can read the fine print for yourselves. I'd like to remind you that 40 Days for Life kicks off on September 21st, and that, somehow or other, is our newsread. So stay tuned, in just about a minute, we'll be right back with Shona Holmes and more GrokTALK. GrokTALK comes to you live almost every Saturday morning from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time on New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. You can also listen live at Spreaker.com. If you missed a live show, catch up with the podcast at GraniteGrok.com, Spreaker.com, on Stitcher Radio, at iTunes, TuneIn, or iHeartRadio, and now on The Rock, New Hampshire's Christian radio station, The Rock, NHCR.com. GrokTALK is a mobile-ready broadcast, so you can listen anywhere, anytime, on your PC, laptop, tablet, or smartphone. GrokTALK.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
3, 2, 1.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of GrokTALK, brought to you by New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, GraniteGrok.com. We are your feared, extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, letter-writing, radio microphone stomping conservatives and rational libertarians. So get ready for more news and opinion you could only get from GraniteGrok.com. GrokTALK. Welcome back to GrokTALK. My name is Steve McDonald. I'm here with Skip Murphy, Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson, our guest from the last segment, has stuck around to continue the conversation. We'd like to remind you to check us out on Spreaker, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. We're also on YouTube and Ustream. You can see what we do at GraniteGrok.com. Bloggers extraordinary. Some of us award-winning bloggers at that. Many of us writing for other blogs and organizations across the country. And, of course, we are on Facebook and Twitter. Right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Let's move forward. Our next guest was on the show in April of 2014. She is, her tagline is, appropriately, a healthcare refugee from Canada, which is true, and she's come here given her expertise. Recently, CNS News had an article. We'd like to welcome Shona Holmes to the show. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Yep, it's great to have you. I'm like, we're going to have Shona on, and I'm like, oh, wait. She's been on the show before. I got to go back and listen to that because I know we talked to you about this, and you've got a new article out here. And the thing that caught my attention was this: according to a new survey, Canada ranks last among 11 OECD countries in the last survey on how quickly Canadians can actually get to see their family physicians.
Pretty sad, isn't it?
Yes, and
in
here
fact,
we are.
The headlines of our paper just last week were for the area that I'm in, and I'm in an area with, well-populated hospitals. You were looking at approximately 2 years for most surgeries now.
Ooh, man.
Yeah.
All right,
Can
so
you
this
imagine
is...
if you needed your car fixed and they said to you, listen, we'll see you in 2 years? How many people would do it? How many people would wait 2 years to get their car fixed? But they will to get their knee replaced or their hip done, or it just blows my mind.
But if you had to go to a government dealership to get your Moskvich fixed, you might wait 2 years.
Exactly, and that's the whole point. We could stop the interview right now.
Yep.
Do not let the government take over your health care, because that's
late.
exactly what happens.
It is horrible. So, well, obviously, the United States has embraced Obamacare. We're on this road. What is there any hope for Canada? Is there any hope for us? What do you think?
Well, you know what? I'm so frustrated because I don't really believe there is a lot of hope for Canada. You're looking at, I'm the constitutional challenger. I'm fighting the province of Ontario just for the right, just think about it for a minute, just the right to be able to purchase private health insurance or put down cash on the table in order to have myself or my family members being taken care of. And we're just not allowed to do it. It is against the law, and I and any doctor that would participate in that type of activity would be penalized very, very harshly. You're talking jail time, whatever. So, it is just amazing that they get away with it and that Canadians put up with it. But I know from the Americans that I've done a lot of work with, they won't tolerate it. And so now's the time to speak out to stop it.
Yeah, you said, and the other half of that paragraph I was reading is that this is a growing problem in our government-run healthcare system, which focuses more and more on people into waiting rooms and local emergency departments, and the premise here is that this has become about health insurance, not health care.
Absolutely, and that's the whole thing that Obamacare was about, and the Affordable Health Care Act, if we're going to be politically correct. And I don't think people are finding it very affordable. And the other thing that I think is so important that your listeners understand is that health care to a Canadian is very, very different than health care to an American, because health care to a Canadian doesn't include dental. It doesn't include any drugs or any rehabilitative services whatsoever. Eye care, hearing, anything like that. So, the average family of four pays about $15,000 a year in taxes, not to mention we've been paying over $4 a gallon for gas for years now, and the same, $4 a gallon for milk. So all of those things, every single dime you spend in Canada, a portion of your money goes to healthcare costs. And what happens when the government runs out of your money? They either tax you more or they reduce your services.
Ow, I just banged my arm on the table. So I know Mark Stein talks about this stuff a lot, being a Canadian and a New Hampshire resident to boot, and I find it very amusing to read what he writes, and it's because of the way he writes. You're right, it's awful. It's like a big joke, and it really kind of is a big joke, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's funny because the doctors will try and appease you to say, listen, it's not that bad. You'll come out right and say, what is the wait time? What am I looking at? And they'll say, well, listen, first we'll put in a recommendation you see such and such a specialist. But let's run this test first. So you're about 3 or 4 weeks to wait maybe for a certain test. I went for an MRI 10 years ago when I first started speaking out. The MRI that I needed, my wait time was 9 weeks. I was reordered that same MRI this year, and the wait time was 5 months and 20 days. So it's now gone up to almost 6 months to wait for that MRI. So, depending on whether or not it's an X-ray, you might be looking at, 3 weeks to get an X-ray. An MRI, you're looking at 6 months. So they'll send you for that test, and then when those test results are in, they'll say, oh, okay, well, we'll just maybe need this test, and they send you for that. Nothing runs in conjunction with one another, and then finally you get to the point where they can send you to the specialist, and then they'll say, listen, if you don't hear from their office within 3 or 4 weeks, call me back and I'll get on it. Before you know it, you are over a year just waiting for the specialist to call you back. And then the government doesn't even count that time on wait times because by obligation they have to monitor what wait times are. So people can be a year getting into a specialist and then 2 years for surgery on top of that. It's criminal. It's absolute criminal.
There was an interesting parallel to what you just mentioned there about starting and stopping the clock. In the UK, they decided to monitor and publicize how long it took for people to be seen at emergency rooms. They fixed that very easily. They had the ambulances wait away from the emergency rooms and come in with the almost dead patient when there was a chance they'd get seen within the time limit.
And exactly, these are the things that need to be exposed. And you and I both know it happens. This is what they do. And you have it happening with your VA hospitals right now. And fortunately for you, the newspapers will cover the stories about the VA hospitals. Here, you don't get any coverage whatsoever of this sort of thing. It's just our dirty little secret. I think there's a faster wait time at the border for people flying over the border just to get to a hospital.
And I'm glad you brought up the VA because it is really a disaster here when we've known about the scandals that have been going on, and we know that hundreds of thousands of veterans have now passed away. And nobody's treating it, the politicians, Obama will say, well, I'm going to concentrate on this. Well, yeah, he's concentrating on that just like he's pivoting to China and pivoting on economics. Yeah, yeah, that's about the only place where he really knows how to pivot, doesn't he, Steve?
Yeah, use your hips. Okay.
But, what? It always comes down that government, once it takes something over, is going to try to use the stats any way that it has to. And if the stats don't make sense or they can't keep to the stats, they do everything under the radar to do it. Like, as you mentioned, the VA has just basically ripped up all of the applications or wait times and schedules and all that other stuff to where you get a black market within the government just to keep the stats right. But my real question to you is, in Canada, as we've seen over in Britain, and even though Mike is from there, I've watched the NHS fiascos one after another. And one of the things that doesn't get publicized all that often is that not only is it the quality of visits going down, as you just related, but it's the quality of the staff that, frankly, you will be hearing an accent when you go to those hospitals. Are you seeing that same thing in Canada? And we already see it here in the United States where, I'm getting to that age where I have to go more and more, and it's like I got to listen hard to figure out what they're saying.
Yes, and absolutely. You get the same thing here. And the worst part about it is nobody's being held accountable. It's the attitude that I get when I, make any kind of ruffle is that you should just be grateful. So be quiet, be grateful. You're not paying for it, which still blows my mind when people say that. And how dare you complain? Because if you complain, then you there's 60 other people in the waiting room that would gladly take your spot. So it really sort of beats you down into a submissive state because you have no choices. You know, I ran into a similar situation that you were talking about there with having my MRI, and I had it done at midnight because they would run appointments till midnight just trying to get everybody in after, 6-month wait. And there was such a language barrier. I could not communicate. Even the questions they asked me, there was no communicating the answers to them because it was just blank looks on their faces. They had no idea what I was saying either. And it's very frustrating, very, very frustrating, and very hard on the patient because, like I said, I tend to not be a person that just stays quiet, but when you're in that situation, you're really forced that you have to because there's no alternative.
Shauna, we're going to take a really short break. Stay on the line. We'll be right back. This is GrokTALK.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Welcome back. We are talking to Canadian healthcare refugee Shauna Holmes, regaling us with the glories of Canadian healthcare and our future.
That's the sad part.
Wait, I think there we go. It's our healthcare future. Hey, I need to go to the doctor. Beating us up. All right, so, gentlemen, questions next. What do we got?
Well, when you say that you're a refugee, Shona, are you still in Canada, but you come across the border for health care, or are you mostly just a gadfly? Or are you here?
No, I am in Canada, and, the numbers of people that are going over the border are increasing every year. Last year, there was about 57,000 Canadians that came over, and that's really only the number the government knows about, because if you're smart, you don't tell them that you've been, because you get a lot of problems when you come back to try and deal with doctors again, when you try to get back into line. And, so, yes, I'm still here, and yes, I still use the American healthcare system whenever I have to. And I feel really bad every time that I say that sort of thing, because it's not that we don't have the talent. I mean, we have very, very talented doctors here, well-trained. Most of them have been trained in the U.S., but, they're very well-trained doctors. And two of the surgeons that worked on me when I had my brain surgery in the U.S. were Canadian doctors, actually. So, America's just got to wake up. Like, they've just got to understand that this is coming their way, and if people don't think single payer is looming in your future, I got news for you. It's coming.
I want to thank you for calling into the show and commenting. I had some friends who were up in Canada, and they had their toe cut off in some terrible accident. They went to the hospital to have their toe sewed back on, and they looked at them like, in America, something's cut off, they try to put it back on and administer antibiotics and, eventually get feeling back, and there's a long rehab process. And they looked at them like they were from space,
Really?
like they'd never heard of that.
Wow.
But when you talk to the high approval ratings for Medicaid and for these countries with socialized government-run healthcare, yeah, the approval ratings are very high for young people. Then you talk to the older folks who've been to the hospital multiple times, and the quality of care when people have actually gone through the system and gone to the doctor's office and they've been put on the long waiting lists under socialized single-payer systems. When you're forced to buy your medical insurance from the government, there's nowhere else you can go. Other people's approval rating is what keeps that monstrosity going. And it's not until you're older and you actually deal with the system that you realize that socialism just doesn't work.
Doesn't work. And the thing is the two demographics that are severely affected in our country are elderly people and premature babies. So many of our premature babies are born and put right in an ambulance and taken over the border. And if their parents don't have passports, I mean, that's my advice. Every baby shower I ever go to is I whisper, make sure you have passports. You know, and I hate to be the one that sounds like I'm looming all this bad news all the time. I don't get invited to very many places anymore. I think that's why. But, you know, it's like, have a passport, because if your baby goes over the border and you can't go with it, but people don't believe that it happens, and it does. You know, when we don't have the facilities to take care of the most vulnerable in your society, what kind of society are you? You know, it is absolutely shocking.
I mean, that was one of the arguments that I used on GrokTALK when, you know, the whole idea of Obamacare was stirring up, is that, you know, example after example of the neonatal care that is just so common here, not just in the large research hospitals, but in most mid-sized hospitals and a lot of the really small ones as well. You know, just the little confinement area that they put a preemie in, for instance, that has all of the medical technology in it that you guys don't have, and that these little ones had to be schlepped across the border because, you know, big city in Canada didn't have it. Little town over just across the border had it here in the States. It's like, what is it that we're going to do to ourselves? Where do we send our babies when that bulge in the snake that you're already going through starts coming through the U.S. system?
Exactly. And, you know, I was watching a program the other day, and a commercial came on for medical tourism in Dubai, and it was an American station, and I thought, whoa, here it comes. You know, and they're advertising Dubai is the place to go. Dubai is the place to come for your medical health care. And it's like, here it comes, because where will you send your babies or your parents or, you know, yourself? You just have no idea how, and really, let's be realistic, how affectionate is the rest of the world towards America and helping them out with their problems.
Oh, I mean, they'll take the money.
Yeah, but I mean, they all stand back and wait for you to take care of them. But, you know, do you really want to rely on them to be able to take care of you? And I just don't believe Americans will stand for it.
Do you have any help? I mean, is there any movement? I mean, obviously, you're saying you don't get invited to a lot of places because, you know, I understand. Trust me, I have family members of my children's friends who haven't invited me over because they know who I am.
Yeah.
So, you know, I get that. But is there any? I know you don't think anything's going to really change, but is there a movement at all that's trying to do something?
I mean, like I said, I mean, I'm obviously, like, being the constitutional challenger, you know, we do try to get that movement, but there's such a pushback. And again, you know, I listened to your last segment, you're talking about unions and whatnot, and that's really who we push against here, you know, because they're motivated in order to keep the system the way it is, the nurses union, the different unions, you know, that sort of thing. They want to keep their jobs, and they want to keep them the way they are, and, you know, when money gets put into hospitals, you know, that's really where all the money goes. It never is patient-directed, you know. So, no, there isn't a massive... It's definitely changing since I spoke out 10 years ago. It certainly is changing. The movement now is, you know, the paper every single week. There was a young girl last week who was waiting for a bone marrow transplant, and she got a perfect match. Absolute perfect match. And you can imagine how elated the family is. There's no hospital bed to put her in. So here she has a match, and there's nowhere to go. Now, I can't even tell you the language that spews out my mouth when I read this thing. I mean, I just scream, because it's like, how can we do this? Is there no moral, you know, ethics involved here? Is nobody saying, look, we have to help this girl? But there just isn't that, because you are just up against a bureaucratic system. And you know, that's the thing about bureaucrats. You can never put a face to them. You never know who actually is making these rules. You know, no, just gets the rules. Computer says no. And what do? You know, who do you fight? Where do you know? And Canadians are so passive.
I mean, you bring up an important...
Except for hockey.
Except for hockey. Yeah, we get a little aggressive there, but I think it's all our frustrations coming out.
I mean, that's a great point you just made, Shona, that when something goes wrong, or if it just, you know, the better case, it just doesn't go quite right, who do you complain to? Because the connection between you, who should be paying for the service, and the person who is being paid to provide the service is cut with a single-payer system. Right. You don't have to care. And that's the worst part of the single-payer system. Nobody has to care. unlike the free capitalist marketplace system where if I'm paying and I'm buying your service, you'd really better care or I'm going to go somewhere else. You're locked in. And yet all of these people who complain about capitalism, they know at the very top they can go somewhere else. There were several stories of your high-level politicians coming here for care because the Canadian system couldn't respond. Well, they had the bucks to be able to move. Well, what about the poor schlub?
Yeah, and this is the thing, and I'll even get a lot of blowback about that as well, because Canadians will say to me, well, at least you're fortunate enough to be able to afford to do that. And I mean, what this all boils down to, my husband's the hero in the story. I mean, what it all boils down to, he's the one that's working 2 jobs. He's the one that put a second mortgage on our house. He works for our local police department, so the economic status that we're in. So it's not that we had it, and we have health insurance, and I'm even blessed to have supplementary health insurance. Like, I have a private health insurance that covers my dental and my drugs and eyeglasses and all that through the police station. But, so many Canadians don't have that, but you're off work for 3 years because you can't, walk the beat in the police department because you have, a bunion. I know a fellow that's exactly what happened. I mean, what does a reasonable person do? How long do you wait? And this is the thing. And then you write your local congressperson and you say, listen, and you get the standard letter back saying, unfortunately, we don't look at individual cases. Well, you're not looking at the big picture either. So what are you doing?
Okay, we've got about a minute.
On that note.
I got about a minute. Can people reach out? Oh, well, go ahead real quick.
I just ask people when I go door to door. Once in a great while, I meet someone who still believes in socialized healthcare, and I ask them, do you believe that life and death medical decisions for you and your family should be made for you by bureaucrats and politicians who you never see and will never care if you live or die?
That's
and
it.
they said?
Yeah.
And they say, well, no. And that's when they kind of wake up and they realize what it is, the false bill of goods that they're being sold.
I liked your car repair shop analogy. That was really good. I'm going to use that. All right, so we got about 45 seconds left. Can anybody reach out to you, help you out in any way?
Well, I mean, ShonaHomes.com is my website, and people have any questions, or that by all means, and just giving me a venue like this to talk to my neighbors and letting them know what is going on, because I still want a great place to come and get my medical care. So if I can't fix things in Canada, God darn it, I'm going to fix them in America.
Well,
so,
we appreciate the help.
Well, I appreciate you letting me have a voice. So.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. You have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Okay, you too. Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye. All right. That was Shona Holmes, Canadian refugee. You heard the story. Listen to it again, and we had her on in April. It's kind of the same thing. It's rough when you got nowhere to go because you got to wait 2 years for a procedure. All right. This is GrokTALK. I'm Steve McDonald here with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Max Abramson and Rich Gerard's in the room. We'll be right back.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at GerardAtLarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Grok TV.